this verse of Quran for you in the khutbah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. And when your Lord announced that if you give thanks, then I will increase you, I give you more. And this لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ is it's so beautiful. Like when you really read Quran and understand Quran and pay attention to Quran. If you don't read Arabic, we can teach you Arabic, how to read Arabic in 6 weeks. And give you 2 more weeks, and I'll teach you how to use the dictionary. So that when you read the Arabic, right, in the Quran, if you have some question, you have some doubt about the translation, you can always check it. You can always look it up and know for yourself. Because Arabic has its own meaning. Here Allah says, if you're grateful to Allah, then He'll give you more. And this la'azidannakum, really, there's maybe 2 different types of ta'keed, emphasis in this word. This lam in the beginning is a lam for ta'keed. And the noon with the mushadda on it, it's also noon ta'keed. So in English, if we were to translate this into English, it would be, and remember when your Lord announced that if you are thankful, then we will give you more, with 2 exclamation points at the end. This is emphasis here. وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. And again, this لَشَدِيد, this is ta'keed. There's a big exclamation point at the end in English here. Okay? Once someone went to Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, and they were asking about this tashakkur, about gratefulness, about being grateful to Allah. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam asked them, if you go to someone's house, masalan it's Shahr Ramadan now, for futur, for a meal, when you leave the house, if the host should stand up by the door and then give you a bill, how would you feel about that? Like brother invites me to his house to eat, we laugh, we drink, we enjoy, and now it's time to leave. The brother stands up at the door and he has a bill ready for me. Masalan, like in the restaurant, right? I mean, really, it's not a good thing. But you invited me here. Now I ate, now I enjoyed, now I drank. Now you want to write a bill for me? Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the same way. In this dunya, you don't have to worry about these things like food and water and this and this and this. So then the person said, so what do we have to do tashakkur for? He said, wilayatana. The wilayat of Ahl Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam. Thankfulness, the gratefulness that we should be expressing in the life, more than for food, more than for clothes, more than for these things, is wilayat Ahl Bayt alayhim as-salam. So this evening we had promised that we would start talking about this period that Africa is very instrumental in introducing Islam into North America. And what we're going to be talking about is the period of slavery. And I want to make something very, very clear for the young people, even for some of the other people that might not understand the difference between slavery that was practiced in the West and slavery, servitude that has been practiced, masalan, in the East, and bil khusus amongst Ahl Bayt alayhim as-salam. Because a lot of times we read that masalan, Hazrat Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or one of the other members of Ahl Bayt had a servant. And I don't want anyone to make the mistake and think that masalan, the slaves of Ahl Bayt, the servants of Ahl Bayt alayhim as-salam ajma'in, were like the slaves here in America. So we have to make that completely clear when you go to school and you learn about the period of slavery in America. Then it was not at all like the servants that were living and serving in the homes of Ahl Bayt alayhim as-salam. And towards the end of our discussion, we'll give some examples of that, inshallah. Okay? Send us salawat so we can continue. The earliest record that I know of, and I'm not a scholar in the region, but I did a little bit of research for this series of speeches. The earliest African Muslim that I know of to come to North America was as an explorer in the 1500s. A man by the name of Mustafa Zamuri. He was also known as Estebanico. Estebanico in Spanish means little Stephen. He was taken as a slave by the Spanish and was brought to the New World in the 1500s. But on the way, their ship encountered a hurricane and they were shipwrecked in Florida. Now, Mustafa Zamuri was one of the survivors, along with some other members of the Spanish expedition. On foot, they traveled and explored from Florida to New Mexico. From Florida, through the Florida Peninsula, into Georgia, through Georgia, into these Gulf Coast states, across Texas, and into New Mexico, before going further south to Mexico City, which at that time in the 1500s was the base, the capital for Spanish America. This is one of the earliest African Muslims to the West. What's very interesting about Estebanico Mustafa Zamuri is that once he arrived in Mexico City, the governor of the Spanish colonies said, well, since you have all this experience exploring this area, we want you to go north again and explore the western side of America, and what today we would call Nevada and Arizona and California, right? Mustafa Zamuri went north, and he had many friends amongst the Native Americans, and he was never seen again. But some of his friends told the Spanish that he had been killed. What most historians think is that Mustafa Zamuri escaped slavery, went to the north with the Spanish to go and do his exploration, and then conveniently escaped into the wilderness and was never seen again. So this is one of those earliest examples that we have. Tonight, I'd like to mention very quickly for you another one of these very famous and well documented in history Muslims from Africa who were brought here as slaves. So we should discuss this, inshallah. Let me move quickly so we don't run out of time. We should mention first that Islam has a very long history in Africa. The first mosque that was ever built was built in Africa. Yani the first masjid ever built was not built in Medina, but it was built in the kingdom of Aksum, what we call today Ethiopia. Because you know some Muhajirin under the leadership of Hazrat Ja'far al-Tayyar went to, we call it Abyssinia, but at that time it was actually the kingdom of Aksum. They went to the kingdom of Aksum, received refuge there, and they stayed there for some time before returning. And even some of the Muslims stayed there and established a community there, and they did not return to the Arabian Peninsula. First masjid built ever was built in Africa. Okay? So Islam was introduced to East Africa through this Muhajirat, through this hijrah of these nobles of Makkah. Now listen, when you read in history, this is something I learned when I was studying. We want to make this very clear. When you read this episode of Islamic history, you get the idea that who were sent to the kingdom of Aksum, those Muslims who were sent to Abyssinia, were weak people, were people who have no tribe and have no support, and they were sent to Abyssinia to protect them from persecution by Quraysh. This is not the fact. There were some people like this in the group. The majority of those people who were sent to Abyssinia were sent to Abyssinia. They were nobles. They were members of Bani Hashim. They were people of wealth, of substance, of status in the society. This is not Prophet sending immigrants to protect them like he did when he sent some people to Medina. This is Prophet sending a diplomatic delegation to Africa. So don't get it mixed up when you read Islamic history and think that Prophet is sending a bunch of poor, badbach, bichare Muslims to Africa to save them. This was a diplomatic mission by Prophet sent to the kingdom of Aksum. And we all know that the Negus, we call him Negus in history. Negus is a title. This name that we call the king of Aksum in our own history, Negus, this is a title for king in the kingdom of Aksum. The king's name was King Arma. And we all know that King Arma accepted Islam and became a Muslim. Now, Islam was introduced to West Africa through Egypt. These Mala'in, they invaded Egypt under the leadership of that big Mal'un, Ama'as. They invaded Egypt, and Egypt fell fairly soon after the invasion of Egypt. But I want to make something clear. When our young people hear about Islam being spread by the sword, this is not true. You can overthrow governments with force, but you cannot overthrow hearts with force. Okay? So we should understand this, that even Masalan, as an example, when the Persian Empire fell, it was the Sassanid Empire that fell. It then took hundreds of years for the Persian people to accept Islam. Yani, the people won't just put the knife to their neck and forced to become Muslim. We do not operate like that. This has rarely happened in Islamic history. I mean, northern Iran wasn't Islamicized, like these areas around the Caspian Sea was not Islamicized until hundreds of years after the Sassanid Empire had fallen. And it was the same with Egypt. It took almost 200 years for Islam to become well established in North Africa. Through the conquest of Egypt, the rest of North Africa was captured. And from North Africa, Islam begins to seep into sub-Saharan Africa by two means: trade and mystics. You know what I mean by mystics? And Sufis. And this is one aspect of Islamic history that has been overlooked. And we'll discuss a little bit about it as we move forward. That Islam has more been spread by mystics, Irfani if you want to call them, Sufi if you want to call them, right, than it has been by the sword. So Islam was spread into sub-Saharan Africa through business contacts and through mysticism. Okay, so by the time of the transatlantic slave trade, there were already existing rise and fall of many Muslim kingdoms in West Africa. And as we mentioned a few nights ago, more than 30% of the Africans brought to the New World were Muslim. Okay, some historians say it may have been as high as 40%. Because today, when you look at the area from which the Africans were taken, it's all along West Coast Africa. And these are predominantly Muslim areas of Africa. So 30 to 40% of Muslims, of Africans brought to the New World were Muslims. And we have a long history of Islam being established in North America by these people. I want to give you this evening very quickly the example of one of them. Send the salawat, please. So one of the earliest that we have a record for is Ayub ibn Sulaiman ibn Ibrahim Diyal. This man was captured. Let me tell you a story a little bit. His family were well-known religious leaders of the Muslim Fulbe people. Today we know them as Fulani, the Fulani people of West Africa. Diallo's grandfather had founded the city of Bundu, and his father Suleiman was a religious figure and political leader in Bundu. Understand the area of Africa that we're talking about that Suleiman was from is right on the border of what is today Senegal and Mauritania. Okay? Diallo had gotten married, he had 2 wives, he had a number of children. When in 1730, he traveled to the coast. This is to show you how advanced African Muslim civilizations were. He traveled to the coast himself and one of his brothers, Lamin. In Africa, in many of these African languages, Lamin, it's the way they pronounce Al-Amin. The man's name was Al-Amin, but it's become known as Lamin. Lamin Kebbe. He went with Ayub to the coast to purchase paper. On the way, they were captured by enemies. Their heads were shaved and they were sold into slavery. And they were brought to the New World. Ayub was purchased by a Mr. Tolsey of Kent Island, Maryland. And he was at first put to work in the tobacco fields. But they found him not suitable for the work in the tobacco fields. And when they asked him what work that he felt he would be best at, he said tending to the cattle. If you know anything about the Fula people, they are pastoralists. They are herdsmen. So he was put over the master's cattle to take care of the cattle. Now, he used to go into the woods to make his salat secretly. But one day, one of the white children of the master saw him making the salat and created a problem for him, made him feel disgraced or whatever. So Ayub ran away. He was eventually captured and brought back. And when the master came to find out who this man is, he made certain accommodations. For instance, they brought him back, but at this time he still hadn't learned English well. They couldn't understand why he ran away. So they brought back another translator. And they asked him, what's the problem? The man said, I need a place to make my salat. Ayub said, I need a place to make my salat. So they tested him. Ayub then wrote some words in Arabic, and the people in the courthouse heard him say Allah and Muhammad. Then they tested him further. They gave him a glass of wine, which he refused. And in this way, they came to understand that he's a Muslim. He was taken back to his master's plantation. He was given a job to take care of the cattle, and he was given a special area to make his salat. Okay? Ayub is known to have written 3 Qur'ans from memory himself while he was here in North America. Because of his literacy, because of his trustworthiness, because of his character, he was allowed to write a letter to his father in Arabic in Africa, and it was sent there. But it came to the attention of a Mr. Oglethorpe in England, who was one of these people who wanted to spread Christianity in Africa. In this way, Ayub was able to, through his knowledge of Arabic, through his own strength of personality, was able to gain his freedom eventually, travel to London, and gain the money necessary to return to his family in Africa. Once he returned to Africa, then he found that one of his wives had remarried. His father had passed away, but through his own industriousness, he was able to reestablish himself again in Africa and began to petition North American authorities to free his companion, Lamin Kebbe, who was taken captive with him. Eventually, Lamin was freed and returned to the Gambia in 1738. Okay? This is a very rare example of a Muslim who, through his own personal strength of character, through his personality, and through his knowledge, was able to gain him and his companions freedom and to return to Africa. There are many more Muslim slaves that were not as fortunate, and their history has been lost to us. Tomorrow night, we'll give another example, inshallah. But tonight, we want to talk a little bit about Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam. Now, I want to make it clear to the young people, to those of us who don't know. You might hear from time to time about members of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam having servants or slaves. But you should never confuse it in your mind with the slavery that was practiced in the West. What we had in the West was what we call chattel slavery. People were considered property and the exclusive property of their master. In Islam, we do not practice this type of servitude, and certainly not amongst members of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. You may find some of these accursed ones who had slaves and treated them very badly, but amongst our people, Shia, followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, those who are in the wilayat of Ali Abi Talib alayhi salam, we have never practiced this type of servitude. You've heard of, for instance, the maid servant of Hazrat Zahra alayhi salam, Fizza. Don't get the mistake and think that Hazrat Fizza was like some of these slaves that we read about in American history. She had a very honored position, a very high position in the household of Hazrat Zahra. So much so that Zahra would share the work with her. Yani today would be Fizza's turn to work, and tomorrow would be Hazrat Zahra's turn to work. Yani they shared the work between them. Another example of a servant that you may have heard about that belonged to a member of Ahlul Bayt is Hazrat Khambar, the servant of Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. And you should never think that Khambar was anything like some of these slaves that were kept here in North America. Khambar was the personal bodyguard, doorman, and servant of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. He's not just a servant, but he was considered one of Imam Ali's very close companions. After the death of Imam Ali, he became the servant, bodyguard, and doorkeeper to Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wasalam. Khambar, along with other prominent companions of Imam Ali, like Uwais Qadi, Maytham al-Tammar, Kumayl, Habib ibn Mazahir, were known as the Shortat al-Khamis, the Shortat al-Khamis, I'm sorry. This was the fifth column of the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali. And in fact, Khambar was in command of this fifth column of Imam Ali's army at the Battle of Siffin. So this isn't chattel slavery that we're talking about when we talk about the servants of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Khambar has also related many hadith and many riwayat from Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam says about it brings tears to my eyes just reading. Imam Sadiq says he loved Imam Ali very much. When Imam Ali would leave his house at night to carry those sadaqat, those ard and those flour and that khurma, the dates and these things for the poor members living in Kufa, Khambar would follow Imam Ali secretly. He would not let Imam Ali know that he was following him. This is what Imam Sadiq says, not Nuruddin. He would follow him with the niyat, with the intention to protect Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. And Imam Ali also, as Imam Sadiq said, loved him very much. Imam Sadiq says that if Imam Ali bought 2 garments, he would give the better one to Khanbar. He would give the better one to Khanbar. He educated Khanbar such that Khanbar is not just a relator of hadith, a transmitter of hadith, but he became a jurist and a faqih in his own right. Hazrat Khanbar relates this story for you. This is one of those riwayat from Hazrat Khanbar. He says, one day, I was with Amir al-Mu'mineen, and as we passed by a woman doing her chores, we heard her cursing the name of Ali. And so Amir al-Mu'mineen was very interested to find out why this woman was cursing him. And so the woman didn't recognize him. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, "What has Ali done to you?" The woman says, "My husband was killed. And now I have to take care of these children by myself. And there's no one here to help me with these children. No one here to help me with their expenses." Ammar says this, that we went back home. Imam Ali gathered flour and dates and other things that were necessary for this family and put it on his own back and started to go and take it for that family. Khanbar says, "Oh, Amir al-Mu'mineen, I am your servant. Let me carry that." Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "No, I have to do this job." And so Amir al-Mu'mineen set out and carried those supplies to that widow's house. When Amir al-Mu'mineen arrived there, then Amir al-Mu'mineen gave her the supplies and said to her, "Look, either I should make the bread and you take care of the children, or I will take care of the children and you make the bread." The woman said, "I will make the bread, you take care of the children." A lot of us, we don't know our Islamic history. Not just about Islamic history here in America, not just about Islamic history in the East. We don't even understand who was Amir al-Mu'mineen, who is Ali, what is the character of Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, what is the personality of Ali. Some of us are walking around pretending to be Ali, but we carry ourselves like kings. And we behave like we're better than the people. We want to imitate Ali, but we're not imitating Ali. We are arrogant and we're filled with ego. So the woman, you take care of the children. I will make the bread. Khanbar says, Ali gets down on the ground, playing with the children, and begins to make the noise of a sheep, so that the children can begin to laugh, and moves around on all fours like a sheep, playing with the children, so that the children can feel happy, so that the children's memory of their dead father, at least for a moment, can be relieved, so that the children can smile, even for those moments that Amir al-Mu'mineen is on the floor, on all fours, playing with the children, making the sound of a sheep. This is your Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is his character, his personality, his love for humanity. This is who the man is. A person happens to pass by the house and sees Imam Ali and says, "Assalamu alaikum, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen." Now the woman understands that this person running around on her floor, playing with her children, is Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Talib alayhi salam. Let's finish it here, then we have just a few more minutes. One story then from Imam Hassan alayhi salam. After the shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam Hassan was sitting in the house of Ali. He was in the house of Imam Ali. And from outside the house, he hears a meek voice calling, "Where are you, my master? And why have you abandoned us?" Imam Hassan hears this voice and he goes out to see who it is. And there, outside the home, he finds a leper. Someone who has leprosy. In those days, if you had leprosy, they put you to live in a village of lepers on the outside of town. This man came from the leper colony that was outside of the city of Kufa. When you're a leper, you lose your fingers, your toes, nose, lips. This is the type of diseases. When the leper in the darkness sees Imam Hassan, he thinks it's Imam Ali. He says, "Master, why haven't you come to visit us? Master, who will change our bandages if you don't come and visit us? Who will bring supplies for us if you don't come and visit us?" Then he understand who is Amir al-Mu'mineen, that in the night he would go on the outskirts of Kufa and serve the lepers in the leper colony of Kufa. People that nobody wants to go near. People that nobody wants to touch. Imam Ali would go there and change their bandages. Imam Ali would go there and bring food for them, care for them, show love for them. This man thinks that Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wasalam is Imam Ali. And when Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wasalam announces to him that I am Hassan, my father has been killed, the leper dies there. They say that the leper gave out one cry and he died there in the presence of Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wasalam. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam was the hope of these people. Know who is your Imam. Do iftikhar in who is your Imam. And let us do our best to follow his example as our Imam. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم ولعنة الله على قوم الظالمين آمين رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على